How's it going, everybody? You know who it is here. Hope you're all doing well and having a lovely start to your 2025. So today we're going to be doing part 2 to the previous video of the most valuable records that I own according to Discogs. Obviously there were more records than I wanted to fit into one video in the previous edition, so I thought this would be a fun little 2-part series that we could do. And how this video works is that I'm tracking my Discogs based off of the median value that somebody will pay for my collection, because on average when I buy stuff off Discogs I don't usually go for the cheapest option, just based off of an accumulation of, am I getting a good pressing, you know, the locality of it, the sort of the type of pressing that I'm getting in terms of the colorway, location of the seller. There's a lot of variables. Sometimes I will get the cheaper option, but rarely do I pay above a sort of median price for it. So yeah, we're going to start the video now, and the first record I want to talk about today is one that I've had for a very long time, one of the earlier records that I got. This is A Perfect Circle with their, I believe, 2000 debut, Mère de Noms. So for those that aren't in the know, A Perfect Circle is the brainchild and offshoot of Tool singer Maynard James Keenan and guitar technician, musician extraordinaire Billy Howerdel, featuring a revolving cast of musicians who've played with them throughout the years. So the interesting thing about this was that Maynard met Billy when he was sort of in the sort of 90s Tool era, and Billy was living with him for a little while. Billy Howerdel played him some demos, to which they both agreed that Maynard would sing on them, and it became a full-fledged project, which became massively successful. And it's a really interesting record, and there are some amazing songs on here. It's very different to what you'd hear from Tool. I mean, it is guitar-driven alternative rock, a la the sort of 90s and 2000s, but it's not as heavy as and sort of druggy and psychedelic as what you'd hear on Tool. But this is you know, still quite wino pretension that you'd expect from Maynard, with some quite nice dissonant guitar work and harmonic effects that are laced all over this thing from Billy Howerdel's guitar playing. Some really great songs. Obviously the opener, The Hollow, is a really cool opener, with some really great guitar riffing and sort of showcases Maynard's range. Maynard's amazing vocal range is just demonstrated all over this record, almost in a slightly different way than he would have been able to do with his other band, just because of the tempo of the music. Particular highlight for me of this album is Orestes, which is one of my favourite songs ever. I love the sort of mystical guitar passage that opens it, and the way it develops with Billy Howerdel's higher register backing vocals. I find that Billy and Maynard make a really great pairing for their sort of singing duties, and the follow-up album was great. And I haven't been a big fan of everything else they've done, because I feel like they might have just sort of lost the magic a bit, but this is definitely worth checking out. This is A Perfect Circle with their debut album, Mère de Noms. The next one I want to talk about is by way of the Japanese loud rock and drone legend Boris, and this is their Pink album. This is a nice little box set that I remember picking up, and this is one of my favourite records by them. It's expansive, it covers a very kind of broad-reaching selection of their sound. You know, you've got the sort of melancholic expressive songs that they would have sort of lean into on albums like Boris at Last, with the sort of expressive instrumentals. And you know, this album opens with the song Farewell. I remember talking about this with a guy in a record store, and he was saying that he'd been to see Boris recently, and actually they'd opened with that song, and he said it was literally the loudest concert experience that he's ever seen. I think my personal favourite track of this album is called Just Abandoned Myself, which starts with some pretty hyper energetic riffing, and you know, goes for a sort of loud rock track banger, and then ends up in this really crazy drone where the sort of the flowing energetic riffing sort of all melds into this really cool sort of classically Boris drone. It's just really entertaining to see. Some, you know, with Boris, you're always going to get a lot of energy, and this is I'd say it's a pretty good starter album for the band, actually, because that, you know, you've got albums by Boris that are just purely drone and purely experimenting in the sort of the textures and you know, voicings that you can get for a guitar. You know, the guitarist Wata, she is a bit of a modern legend when it comes to just using an amplifier as an instrument, and you do get a lot of this on this album. It's obviously a longer affair, but it's so entertaining that, you know, you can just sit down and listen to it in one sitting like it's nothing. So yeah, definitely, you know, if you've never checked out Boris, this might be a good place for you to start. This is Pink. Okay then, so I've got a box set I'm going to talk about next. Most of you, if you're into music, you'll be familiar with this, but this was, I think, maybe the first box set I ever bought. This is the Smashing Pumpkins with their amazing classic double album, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. This is a really beautiful set of their music, and I feel like it kind of gives you a fuller physical representation of what the artist really wanted you to see. You know, you've got this sort of almost fairy tale book spine down the side that obviously matches up with the cover artwork, and yeah, obviously another long record that is full of classic songs from, you know, the Pumpkins back catalogue. You've got obviously 1979. You've got the amazing opening tracks that lead into Tonight Tonight. You've got my favourite song by them that they've ever released, Bullet with the Butterfly Wings. And this was, I think, conceived during a very frustrating period for the band, because as anyone who's aware of Billy Corgan, the mastermind guitarist, vocalist, weirdo behind this music, is a very fussy person to work with, from what I gather. If I'm right in thinking that every guitar track that was originally penned by this band's guitarist for this album was actually initially thrown out by Billy Corgan, just in his search for a perfection. And actually, to be fair, I mean, as frustrating as it must have been to put together, this is an amazing album, and if you're going to backtrack through musical history, you're going to come across this at some point. And that is the Smashing Pumpkins with Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. Right, cool. So, relatively more recent one that I want to talk about, and I think it's the only hip-hop album I'm going to be talking about today, but this is one of my favourite hip-hop records to be released this decade so far, and I'm talking about Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist with their amazing collaboration, Alfredo. This is one of those collaborations, you know, that just had to happen. The style of The Alchemist's production and the way that this album pulls you into its world, complemented by the fact that Freddie Gibbs is one of the best, absolute best modern rappers and storytellers going today. You can just listen to him and you just know this is somebody who has seriously honed their craft. You know, if anybody who's not into rap music thinks that it doesn't take talent, it doesn't take skill, just watch a live performance of this guy, because he's a craftsman. And, you know, this really does allow both artists to shine. You've got sort of moody late night guitar, like soft bluesy instruments, while, you know, Gibbs is doing his sort of trademark storytelling with his really mid-tempo flows, his brilliant wordplay. I'm not, you know, when I listen to a lot of albums, a lot of the time, you know, I am listening to them in full album format, and I listen to a lot of music, so I can't always remember particular tracks. But if I'm right in thinking, it is the song Skinny Suge, which is my particular favourite off of this album, although, you know, this is all killer, no filler. But if you're going to listen to one track, I'd definitely check that one out. Again, one of the best collaborations of this decade so far. Definitely think you should check it out. And that is Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist with Alfredo. Okay, going more into the psychedelic rock territory now, we have the Flaming Lips with a recent album of theirs, American Head. This is a late career gem from the Lips, and it is just as good as they've always been. You know, it's one of their better records. I think it will be a classic within their collection. It is as psychedelic and obscure and unpredictable as they've always been. I actually caught them when they were touring this album, and as amazing as they are when they're playing music, you know, they put a lot of effort into their live shows, as you can tell, you know, with all the stage props and the lighting and the confetti. You know, the vocalist, Wayne Coyne, is an interesting guy, but when I was seeing them play, it ended up being the most sort of on the fence for me concert that I've been to, because between songs, this guy just goes on fucking monologues for about 10 minutes, and I'm just thinking, this isn't what I paid to come see you do. When you're playing music, you guys are really good, but I don't mind audience interaction at a show as long as the artist is, making something interesting that's going to add to the experience. But Wayne Coyne was just going on a 10-minute diatribe about fucking shit. About, I don't know what he was talking about. Don't care. That said, really great album. Songs like Mother, I've Taken LSD, Me and You at the Movies. It is, the kind of soft vocals that you expect from Wayne in his upper register that he developed in the sort of mid to late part of their career. And just, the sort of psychedelic instrumentals, great production, just a really cool modern rock album. That is the Flaming Lips with American Head. Okay, cool. So one of the absolute most beautiful records in my whole collection is this one. This is Ichiko Uoba with Windswept Adan. This is a Japanese folk artist, and I was not aware of her prior to this album's release. I've listened to this dozens upon dozens of times. It is absolutely stunning. Her voice is mesmerizing, angelic, hypnotic, and it is some of the most beautiful folk music you're likely to ever hear in your life. Just put it on, lay there, and just let it wash over you. It's like peacefully swimming, like the album cover. It's like peacefully swimming underwater, and there's just nothing but just you and whatever you're doing. She puts on an amazing live show. I've not been fortunate enough to see her, but all the videos and all the footage I've seen of her performing live is just an artist at the absolute peak of their powers. So that is Ichiko Uoba with Windswept Adan. And then there's one more album that I'm going to talk about today, and this is from an artist who I have very many records from. They're one of the artists that I have the most records from of a single artist, and this is Swans with The Glowing Man. This is the third and final album of their amazing 2010s trilogy, with albums in tandem including The Seer, of course To Be Kind, and this, The Glowing Man. In my opinion, out of the three albums, this has the best overall flow. I think it's the most consistent, and I think it has some of the most exciting and interesting concepts of that whole trilogy. I go back to the trilogy for different reasons. I don't think this is the loudest of the three, although it does really have its moments. This cycle of albums, and this is a good example of it, to me demonstrated the full capabilities of what modern contemporary rock production can show. And on the title track here, you're given this really very sort of run-of-the-mill for Swans at the moment, sort of ambient kind of string scrapey intro, which, and when I say run-of-the-mill, I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean, if you know their sound by now, you'd be familiar with it, into the sort of burbum, like slow tempo percussion versus guitar sort of trading of singular notes that just goes on for 2, 3, 4 minutes, just that on its own, and it just completely hypnotizes you with just the absolute heft of it. And then it works its way gradually into a piece of music that just progresses really nicely. It has this amazing bass line, and Michael Giro's vocals just are absolutely unhinged, like we've come to expect from him. It kind of does feel maybe more transcendental than a lot of the stuff that they'd released in the run-up. I feel like they had been known for a kind of transcendental vibe, but here I think you're really given a sort of otherworldly, even godly sort of portrayal of the narrative. And it's a really long album. I think this is over 2 hours, which is, was the commonplace occurrence during this era. I got to see them perform, I think, Cloud of Unknowing, which is one of the earlier songs on this album, when I saw them last year, which was amazing. That concert was phenomenal, super loud. This is, obviously, it's Swans, so it's challenging rock music. It's not conventional 3-4 minute songs. You've got everything from shorter songs up to very long pieces on this album. You have kind of beautiful song, I believe, prior to the title track in the second half of the album, where you've got these female vocals depicting what sounds like a sort of relationship abuse situation, and it's a really dark and ominous picture. It's actually quite scary, but then the way that leads into the title track is just so well done, and the flow of the album is impeccable. So yeah, that's Swans with the Glowing Man. Amazing album. You know, I love it. Love revisiting their music and just getting lost in a 2-hour epic. So that concludes part 2 of this video. Again, I've got more stuff lined up. Guys, if you enjoyed me talking shit about the stuff in my collection, whether you like music, whether you hate music, whether you like a certain type of music, or you just want to hear me talk about obscure stuff or whatever, just thank you for listening to the video. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe. You know who it is, and stay tuned for more content. All right, guys, thank you very much.